Thank you, everybody. My name is Lionel Chidi. I'm the president of the Hicksville Chamber of Commerce and also the president of the Senior Westbury Alumni Association. Thank you for coming down. We're going to be talking about a little bit of economic development and infrastructure in Nassau County. Got our panelists here. We're just going to ask them to introduce themselves as we go through. Please.
Good afternoon. Robert Kennedy, Mayor of the Village of Freeport.
Jeff Greenfield, the real Jeff Greenfield, not the guy on PBS. I'm starting my 12th year at the Nassau County Planning Commission. I'm the chairman.
Nick Terzulli, Director of Business Development for the Nassau County Industrial Development Agency. I will also be speaking for Presiding Officer Norma Gonzalez, who's unable to make it this morning as she's dealing with some budget issues back in the office.
Michael Martino, Communications Manager for, we are now United Water, we are now Suez though. So from here on in, I'm going to the now company is Suez. We changed our name 1 month.
And I'm Rebecca Deloya. I'm a Vice President for Development at Nassau Event Center, the company entity developing the Coliseum for City Radnor Company.
And also, gracing our presence is New York State Senator Jack Martins. Mr. Williams, the chair of the Nassau County IDEA. Just to get started, a little bit about what I see as far as economic development. Everybody talks about the numbers, everybody talks about downtowns and all the other good stuff. The reality is, this stuff costs money. How are we going to budget it? How are we going to pick which plan goes in? What goes to the top of the list? What goes in the middle? How are we going to figure out our priorities? Me, I'll start off with Hicksville. Hicksville, they've been talking about a revitalization plan since 1969. I was born in '68. Numerous plans back and forth over and over again. We're still talking about the same area. Triangle area, if you're not familiar with Hicksville, 106, 107, Broadway. Largest train station in the county. We're not going to go into the details, but we're looking to make it a little bit more attractive. A, because it's close to the train station, trains are already developed. And also that we can generate revenue, clean up the area, and make things a little bit more attractive. These items lead into our brain drain, the economy, work, everything goes hand in hand. Fortunately enough, we were able to bring the community together, reach out with the help of Oyster Bay, put together a plan. Again, we know that the entire thing's not going to be done, but we got to start from someplace. And the town accepted it. It's going to be a work in progress. Nothing's going to happen overnight. I'm happy that Nick is here, and I'm going to pick him in a little bit. There is a little street, Duffy Avenue in Hicksville. The IDA calls it IDA Way. Why? Because there have been so many manufacturing, so many different types of companies that you don't really see in the forefront. But they're there, they're worked out with the IDA. I've been approached to help give my opinion on certain items, to help get these businesses here, keep them here and attract them here. So Nick, if you could just talk about a couple of those things?
Sure. So, I think if I can make just one general point, it's a really exciting and good time to be in economic development and in business in Nassau County. I know, we deal with a barrage of pessimism just about everywhere we go, with the paper and the press, but there are really good, positive, and interesting developments that are happening. And finally, after so many years of people talking about things, things are actually happening in the real world, and you can see it by brick and mortar development. So the Industrial Development Agency, for folks that aren't familiar, we're able to essentially exchange tax incentives for job creation and job retention. And we do that through a variety of sectors. It's not just industrial in terms of old smokestack development. We do that and we want that, but our ability to incentivize businesses is much broader than that. As Lionel mentioned, on Duffy Avenue in Hicksville, it's a main commercial and industrial area in the county. And we've been able to successfully, over the past few years, bring in businesses from outside of the area to Nassau and make sure that Nassau County businesses that stay and employ so many of our friends and neighbors stay here. A perfect example that I'll talk about on Duffy Avenue is Nassau Candy. So Nassau Candy, frankly, I don't know how they can leave and go someplace else, right, with a great name, but they certainly could. They have operations in many, many different states. And while it may not be the most well-known company on Long Island, they manufacture chocolate and candy items for so many different companies and brands. If you go to CVS, Walgreens, Trader Joe's, they do all the candy for Disney is made right here on Long Island. They came to us and said, listen, we can go to all of these other locations where we have facilities where, frankly, it's a cheaper place to do business, a cheaper place to live. And we were able to, working with our colleagues in government and with the local chambers and local leaders, convince them to stay. So 2 years ago, we gave them a tax incentive to stay on Long Island, to stay in Nassau County. And just a few months ago, they came to us and said, we're doing so well, we need more room, we need more space. We need to add 30,000 square feet to the building you already gave us an incentive on. Can you help us out? We're going to add more jobs, of course. That's exactly what we're going to do. So it is an exciting time. A lot of good things are happening.
Beautiful, beautiful. And he says candy, I've been in there. You're talking massive bins of Skittles almost jumped in.
and they're good corporate citizens. They give tours to Girl Scouts. If anybody wants a tour with their community group, they're good corporate neighbors.
They enjoy the chamber, yeah, but we'll work on that. Mr. Kennedy, Freeport's a little bit different. You've got your own electric, you're by the water, you're impacted by Sandy. Talk to us a little bit about the development economically and also infrastructure. What does it mean for you guys?
Well, I made a few notes, and I just want to touch base. There's so much going on in the village of Freeport. Freeport itself, we have a 50 meg gas turbine that provides electric to New York State. Not just the village of Freeport, we provide power to New York State. This service that we provide is absolutely clean, and we also maintain all the overhead wiring, all the substations, all the transformers. We don't call any outside service for the village of Freeport electric-wise. We maintain everything. We also have 14 wells. We have our own towers. We have our own pumping stations. We have our own chlorination stations. We also maintain all the underground plumbing for all your domestic water lines and your sewer lines. So we have in-house staff that maintain all of that. These are important items when you look for economic development. You know, we're also looking at, we want a friendly buildings department to work with development. We don't want to be harassing people who are trying to develop. We try to expedite permits. I've, on occasions, brought in our electric department, our water department, our buildings department, our ZBA, our planning board, and the police department to sit around the table for a company that wants to come in and develop in the village of Freeport. So they have parameters and a way to move forward so we can expedite those permits and not wait 6 months or a year. Everything's done within the village of Freeport. So we're not really going outside entities to process and get these buildings developed. The secure, safe streets is very important if you're looking for industrial development. And for example, nobody wants their wives, children, employees, or themselves to be worried about getting in and out of work safely. We just employed recently a program that was unveiled that it's called Operation Safe Streets in the village of Freeport, where we installed close to $750,000 worth of license plate readers through a fiber optic system that tells any vehicle that's coming into the village that's stolen, has stolen plates, has no insurance, or there's an outstanding warrant for his arrest. And it's not a big brother issue because you come through the village 50 times, we never knew you were here. The only time we'll know is if you don't have insurance, you don't have the license plate, or it's stolen, you have an outstanding warrant. It flags. In 3 weeks, they've impounded over 300 cars and arrested 6 different groups for stolen vehicles. Simply 2 nights ago, we had somebody driving through the village of Freeport. It flagged as a stolen vehicle. 2 police officers went after the car. Within 30 seconds, had the car pulled over. And these were bad boys. They had guns. They had heroin. They were wanted for robberies. They were wanted for burglaries. They were outstanding warrants from the feds. And we picked them up that night. Had we not had this equipment, we would not have been able to do it. Freeport is the first village in New York State to mandate every police officer wears a body cam. This is a tremendous, first police department in New York that every police officer wears a body cam. These are great things. We just ordered tasers for every police officer. So they have the option. You have an emotionally disturbed person. You don't have to use a lethal weapon. You have the option to use a taser. So these are things that I think that are welcoming and bringing in business into the village of Freeport. I have to be very concerned with Superstorm Sandy, however. You know, the flip side of that coin is, which we just had a big meeting with Senator Schumer's office and the Army Corps of Engineers, because we're requesting that a feasibility study be done, not to restore the villages in Nassau County in the event of another Superstorm Sandy, but prevent it. We need to put gates at Jones Inlet, Debs Inlet, build up the barrier island to protect the entire Nassau County. We don't need to rebuild after the fact, we need to protect it. So we're working with the Army Corps of Engineers. And this is what's going to continue to bring business. Businesses don't want to come to an area that's going to flood, where they lost all their business of the 5 feet of water. So we have to be ahead of the game. We're moving with the Senator's office, Schumer, we're moving with the Army Corps of Engineers. We want to prevent these things from happening. And you know, just a brief explanation on gates. These gates, they have them in Holland, they have them in Netherlands, they have them in Connecticut, they have them in Rhode Island. These gates would stay open all the time. And the only time you would close the gate to prevent the water from coming in is during a named storm or a hurricane. You could close it 2 hours before the storm, open it 2 hours after high tide, you protected all of Nassau County. These are things that we have to look forward for. This is what we're going to do to keep the industrial and economic development in places like Freeport.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Springfield, you are challenged with Nassau County as a whole. You talk about infrastructure and you talk about development. What comes to mind?
Progress. We move it along. I'm very proud of my leadership and track record at the Nassau County Planning Commission. I'm supported by County Executive Swazi and reappointed by the current county executive, Ed Mangano. We are a no-nonsense group. We have a small staff. We don't delay. When Nick and his team at the IDA brings a deal in Nassau County, or Mayor Kennedy or other mayors, we work with these individuals. We move it forward. We keep it moving forward. We are very proactive in getting the item on the agenda, getting it addressed, and getting it moved to the point where they can complete the task, the IDA can fund it, the villages can welcome it. And I run a very open, approachable championships. I hear from mayors all the time. Sometimes my staff isn't happy with that, but I don't have a shy, reserved personality, so many of the mayors know me and have my cell number, and I get phone calls and I take action. My goal and my approach to it is we got to get the job done. My staff knows that, my commission members know that, and the people that come before us at our hearings are heard, whether it is the local legislators that come from time to time to express their concerns, neighbors, residents, we're respectful of it. The common enemy in Nassau County is NIMBYism. We try to cut through the NIMBYism. The most recent example of what I consider NIMBYism at its worst is the slot palace or casino. We need revenue for Nassau County. We have the state legislation. How many of you have ever been to a casino? I'm sure everyone here. How many have gone through the slot aisles? My mother-in-law and other seniors with purple hair. That's who you have in the slot aisles. I don't know why they're a threat. I don't know why they're a threat to a gated community. I don't know why they were a threat to the mayor of Freeport.
Because my wife would be in the slot house.
That's the real reason.
That's the reason.
The mayor of Westbury, I didn't mean to say that.
That's okay, I got you.
But anyhow,
Write that down.
I don't know where we're going to find a place in Nassau County, maybe in Jones Beach, because it's recreation. Well, maybe the Piping Plovers will start a lawsuit against it there, but we got to find a home for this. We got transportation there. It's good. I'll give you the example of a change in attitude. Rockville Center, 6 years of litigation against Avalon, prior administration. $1.6 million judgment against the village of Rockville Center. Part of it insured and part of it not insured. Now we have the son of Avalon, or Avalon 2, coming to town. A totally different attitude from the current administration. A total embrace, working with the developer, working with the planning commission, doing good, positive development in Nassau County. Our young people need somewhere to live. That I have 2 children in their early 30s. One left Long Island, one I'm fighting to keep. There's no place for young people to live. We're very big on TOD, transit-oriented development. We need it for 2 reasons, for young people, and in Avalon 2, we did something different. We increased the density and allowed them to put in more studios, so it's affordable. Young people want to be in Rockville Center because of the transportation to the city and because of the bar nightlife in Rockville Center within walking distance. That's it. That's the attraction in New York City. They can't afford New York City. Then we have the older generation that want to sell their houses and still stay near the children and grandchildren. They need someplace to go. TOD is the answer. Mineola's doing a great job on it. We're very supportive, and we're work with any village, any community that wants that embrace and show them how to do it. In Island Park, we worked with Nassau County on a project, and they're going to put a walkway and redo under the Long Beach Bridge to make it accessible to the railroad. So there's good things happening in Nassau, like my associate said, and I'm happy to help move it along.
Thank you. And something that you mentioned that hit us in Hitsville, you know, with talking about revitalization, and you mentioned the word apartments. I'll never forget, we went to a charrette, and I had two old women in the audience, and they came to me and goes, "You're with the chamber, you want to put apartments in our neighborhood." I said, "Ladies, I'm happy you came. I live out in Suffolk County. I recently moved over to Manorville." I said, "Listen, I'm just here to try to guide you guys. I don't live here. This is your community. I just want your input. But let me ask you, did you have kids?" "Yes." "How long have you been here?" "Almost 40 years, almost 35 years." I said, "Did your kids go to college?" "Yes." "When they graduated from college, where'd they live?" And they both looked at me and said they moved back in with us. I said, "Why?" They couldn't afford a home. Prices are too high. Things have been going on the way they've been going for so long. Things have to change. They have to be developed. They have to work. Now they're at, you know what, maybe we do want some variety of housing stock. Different types of places for people to have options on what they want to do. We look at the downtowns. We want it thriving. We want the young people that could live, work, and play in those areas, hop on a train from Hicksville, one place else, go into the city, or maybe Freeport, and come back and do what they got to do. But again, it's all about education. Like I said to those ladies, I'm not here to force you or make you do anything and give you my 2 cents. It's your opinion, but you need to take a look at the different options that are available. Michael, Sue, isn't it, right?
Well done.
What does economic development, and why the heck does anybody need sewers?
Well, let me see if I can outbase Jeff. Let's see whose voice reverberates in their heads afterwards longer. Try to be clever here, and I want to come up with an anecdote somehow. I'll give it a shot. It'll maybe leak. However, I'm fairly confident to say that, with the exception maybe of me, because I work for a company that deals with wastewater, the majority of the people in the room take for granted what happens when you take a shower, when you turn on your faucet, when you flush your toilet, what happens in the system, or what happens to that water. So it's probably, arguably, the most critical piece of infrastructure in any community, in any county, anywhere, in any municipality. You know, we always talk about Sandy, right? You always have to bring up Superstorm Sandy, and the mayor does, and economic development and so on. Because there were a lot of silver linings in that cloud, and we learned a lot of lessons. Unfortunately, we had to go through some tough times. But here was a lesson learned. Here was the question. What would happen if a major sewage treatment plant was rendered inoperable at any given time because of a natural disaster or something? And it was always like an exercise, almost a rhetorical question. What would happen? Well, I don't know, maybe this happened. Well, we now know, because during Sandy, the Bay Park Sewage Treatment Plant, which treats 50 million gallons of sewage per day, was shut down for 40-something hours, 42 hours, is all it took for raw sewage to be breaking through streets, pouring into homes, threatening public health. It was an insult to the injury of the people who had suffered already so much, because, of course, everything is gravity, water is gravity, and the collection point at its lowest area, one was in Bay Park, which sits right where one of the sewage treatment plants is, and the other one is in Cedar Creek. But the two lowest points in the Bay Park collection system, which had already had 6 feet of water, blew out the streets. Homes that were already flooded with salt water had geysers of raw sewage, geysers shooting out of their toilets, breaking through lawns I fancy myself a wordsmith, and I like to be dramatic, but I will tell you that after the storm, driving down to Barnes Avenue in Baldwin, there were there were lawns with geysers of raw sewage shooting from the lawns. So again, we don't have to wonder any longer what happened. Now we know. So what do we do to prevent it? So now, I would say, am one of the people who sort of took for granted what happens when you use the water, when you flush those. I spent some time at the county. I worked for county executive, then I worked for the Public Works Department. Through that job, I worked with many people in the room, Mayor Donald right here, Legislator Birnbaum, trying to deal with important quality of life issues, everything from a traffic light to honestly a tree that came down or a sidewalk that's blown out, because that's what you have to do. But I also got educated in the world of wastewater, and very quickly had to understand how critical it is. Nassau County was not good in the wastewater business. They just weren't. I'm not speaking out of school. The county executive would tell you, deputy county executive would tell you, we just weren't good at it. Economic development is stymied when you have lack of sewage infrastructure, lack of development, residential, as we talk about, I don't even know what we call it, workforce housing or affordable housing and so on. Call any buzz term you want to use, and I'm sure there's plenty going on today in this hotel. The bottom line is, where do people go and live and where can they? Right? So United Water signed a 20-year agreement, and we are the operators and managers of the wastewater plants, both Cedar Creek and Bay Park, and both of which have the same capacity. I'm just gonna, and I'll stop so I can pass it on to you. So, in the wake of the storm, Nassau County received $800+ billion to fix Bay Park, because the plant was already on its knees before the storm, and everything was just destroyed. To the mayor's point, as far as mitigation, they've gone so far now as we're building a protective berm around, and I say we, it's a county project, but I feel like I'm vested in it as well. There's a protective berm around the entire perimeter of the plant that would essentially stop floodwaters from coming in and giving some sort of comfort to it. But what we've known, and what I'll sum up with saying is, what's the saying? Out of sight, out of mind, right? And you take it for granted. You see the traffic lights, and you see the stores, whether they're vacant or they're full, the restaurants. Every single one of those areas, every single one of those counties connects to our system in Nassau County. You need to be very aware of the environmental implications and the economic implications of literally every time you use that water. There is something. So, rambling over.
You're listening. Rebecca, for City Retina, what does it mean to you guys, other than the obvious, which you can state?
So actually, I've heard a lot of great things from the first four speakers that I think actually speak to a little bit about what we are trying to accomplish at the Coliseum site. And I'll just start by saying as a daughter of a plumber, I know a lot about the stormwater system. He was constantly yelling at me, telling me the gallons per minute that were coming out of the shower. Entering minute 15 in junior high school, so I didn't know about that. And interestingly, one of the improvements we're making at the Coliseum involves installing all waterless urinals. In Barclays Center, actually in Brooklyn, that translated to about a 40% reduction in water usage for the building. So, yeah, well, there's a lot of urinals. So I guess for us, obviously, Forest City is developed in the city, and Brooklyn is really where we've made our mark. But we believe in the Nassau market, wholeheartedly, and I think it's for all of the reasons that are highlighted by some of my co-panelists up here. We think that the development at the Coliseum and the renovation of that building, which really has an amazing history, and I think it's important just to state from the beginning that our thoughts about the Coliseum are not about really knocking it down. We've never wanted to bulldoze it. It actually has some great sightlines inside, and it has a great history, and it means a lot to so many people on Long Island. A lot of great entertainment, amazing sporting events have taken place there over the decades, and we really hope that our renovation just honors that and amplifies it and fixes some of its warts, which probably you could all name for me as well. So the other thing that's important about the Coliseum is its ability to be a catalyst for what really needs to happen at the hub. And obviously the hub has been the focus of so much discussion over the decades as well. Transportation planning and infrastructure thoughts, and it's a great palette and a great opportunity. And it's not going to happen all at once, as you sort of mentioned too. A solid first beginning, a solid first step is important. So the Coliseum renovation itself is really going to transform the building into a modern facility that can host, a whole bunch of different types of events, sporting, concerts, family shows, and it is important to make it a landmark for people, for young families to stay. What we found at Barclays actually is that a lot of our we do origin studies of most of the people at all of our events at Barclays. We sort of say, where did you come from, where do you live, and we survey those people, and we found that only about 10% of folks are coming from Nassau and Suffolk County. That means that people who live on Long Island want their entertainment on Long Island, and they'll stay here if we give it to them. So it's really, planning over 200 to 250 events a year at the Coliseum is, and having a wide range of things that can appeal to sporting fans, concert goers, and families is a big part of the plan. Architecture is also a big piece of it, and I think that repositioning the building and giving Nassau something that they can be very proud of in terms of world-class design is important. These things matter. It feels good to walk to a building, even if you're paying $10 to see a circus, to walk into a place that was designed by award-winning architects makes you want to go back. It's important. And we'll carry that sort of level of detail even into the design, to the operations of the staff. So all of the staff at the Coliseum will be trained by Disney Institute. That's they're sort of the leaders in addressing the customer service aspect, and we think that's really important too. So I think that the bringing high design, making sure that the programming that we have at the Coliseum appeals to a wide range of people, and thinking about the long term, the longevity of that site, and this as a catalyst, the first step in really achieving what Long Island has wanted for that site for a long time, is something that we just couldn't be more excited about.
Very candid. I want to open up to people now, because again, a lot of it's education. I want to hear some of the opinions from the people in the audience. Does anybody have any questions? What does development mean to you? What does it mean to move forward?
I have a comment, especially since you're stuck in the quagmire of Hicksville. But in terms of what Mayor Kennedy said, I've recently done some projects in Freeport. When I go into the building department in Freeport, they're there to help me. They'll help me fill out a form. They'll let me know if I need to correct something. They really bend over backwards. Even if I need a document, they get it for me without a foil. Whereas yesterday, I had to go refile an application in another municipality. And I even said to my wife, I dread going in there because not only do I expect them to aggravate me or not even take my application or torture me, but if I'm missing a comma or a paragraph, they'll probably use it as a reason to reject it. So, and as a developer, I want to go to Freeport, or I want to go to municipalities where they are willing to work with me. We're not looking to build a 30-story project or something that doesn't fit in. When you have a project that makes sense and the municipality works with you, and recently I had a similar experience with the town of Hempstead where they helped me get something done and they helped me expedite it because I wanted it, that's where you want to be. And that's what some of these, the building department should be the friendliest customer service place in any municipality, as opposed to some places that are just closed for business. And that's why nothing's been done.
Erwin, please tell them the Nassau County Planning Commission also moved
Jeff,
your application
every
along.
project I said to you, you stamp and you approve. I didn't even have to go to the hearing, Jeff, so thank you so much.
Just to add to that, I get phone calls from not people just in Hicksville, not just in Oyster Bay, throughout towns. And I look at both sides of it. Okay, what's the problem? I had somebody call me from Hempstead. Oh, the town hates me, whatever, they don't like me. They said no. No to what? Well, I gave them some documents and they pushed it back and said no. I said, you asked them why. Went back up there and asked them why. Oh, you need to fill this form out too and sign here, and it's good. It's education, it still goes back to that, but again, I do hear where you're coming from.
But they're torturing you, because if they really wanted to help you,
yes.
like I said with the Village of Freeport, they would say to you, by the way, you missed this form, you need to do this, or there's another department, as opposed to, they'll use it as a reason just to take a project that, should be approved in 60 days to 3 years. I mean, and that's what they use.
And you're right,
as
so
an excuse.
it's a hindrance, especially for developers. I was talking to a gentleman over in Oryx, and he goes, listen, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna develop where I'm wanted. If they don't want me,
Right.
I'm not going to go, I'm not going to waste my time.
Or partner with them.
Yeah, I got to echo two things. I mean, I wanted to take a 6-foot length of my 4-foot fence because my house got shot by a BB gun from a local community center, my son's window. And it took me a year to get
Only
variance for the 6-foot fence, all right? And I had to sit all night on the agenda.
They shot the wrong person.
Exactly. You know, and I think that it is ridiculous. That's an insanity when I see McMansions popping up all over. But I just want to talk about Jeff. Jeff is a rough taskmaster. I will tell you, I sit on OSPAC, and we have to keep on schedule because Jeff wants to put things on the schedule. I will tell you that. So kudos to Jeff.
Thank you.
I saw other hands, oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm quite disappointed in the current legislature in Nassau County because first of all, their lack of transparency is transparent. They put profit of everything, like you're talking about the casinos with the little old ladies, that's not exactly true. You know, you're making all these jokes, but meanwhile, you cut down the trees on South Oyster Bay Road going through many towns without a hearing. You have trucks. Now, people finally came out to say, we can't have these mammoth trucks because FedEx wants them. Our roads can't even support them. Then, yesterday, I couldn't believe it. I was shopping, and I see them cutting down trees on Old Country Road. And I didn't know about that. I am disgusted with the lack of transparency, the fact that I just heard this woman has to suffer and he has to suffer to get permits done. Don't tell me about your job and your mother. Let me tell you. And you don't help the builders have affordable apartments because you don't subsidize the affordability. That's what should be done for people, public assistance, plus the kids who can't afford to live here. You're really not running it correctly.
Let me just jump in on that. Now I'm going to put on my Chamber of Commerce hat. Things need to be done. What you just mentioned about the trees. I saw hundreds of people come out and complain. They got action done. But when I talk about downtown Hicksville, I have to drag people out. I tell people, if you want change, you need to participate, you need to come out, you need to have your voice heard. I know you come out, I know other people come out. It's the education portion. Why for some things, not for bigger things? We have people here who can give that input. What I hear a lot of times when I talk to municipalities is, well, we're not sure because people aren't telling us that. We can't do everything. We can't. But again, we're happy that people come out and do voice their opinions. I just wish it was across the board a little bit more, especially when it comes down to living spaces for the next generation, jobs for the next generation, development for the next generation. It all comes into the same pot. Yes?
So I am the next generation. I'm 33. I moved to Long Island because I got a job at Hofstra University. I moved down from New Haven, Connecticut, where I was living when I did my postdoctoral fellowship there. I did actually move down to Long Island. And there are many things.
Tell your friends.
Not yet. Not yet. That's what I'm saying. Not yet. I'm withholding any sort of approval for Long Island until I see more sustainable growth. New Haven is a city beset by conflicts and difficulties as well, and nevertheless they have a thorough biking system, and they have run up the ranks in the last 5 years. They've run up the ranks for among the most bikeable small cities in the United States. There is no bikeability here on Long Island.
Right.
I cannot physically make it from Long Beach, where I live, to Hofstra, where I work, which I would happily bike to. It's about 11 miles. I can't safely make it. My two opportunities are Long Beach Boulevard or Meadowbrook Parkway, right? What are my options, right?
How's the traffic on that?
Meadowbrook, let's not talk about it. But that's not even what I'm here to say. So yesterday, you say it's about education, it's about getting out. My background is in health policy. I know it's about getting out. I do health advocacy for my profession. However, yesterday I went to the nice hearing that they had at the Nassau legislature to talk to the busing, the bus.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
I can't remember what they're called, but it doesn't matter. So, you know, we spoke to them, and one of the people who was there on the committee said, you know, we don't really have the power to decide. The legislature has the power to decide. I say, okay, so when does the legislature meet? Oh, I don't know, 1 o'clock on a Thursday, but sometimes on a Monday, and sometimes they tell you, and sometimes they change it. So yes, I want to be active. I also teach full time. How do I show up to a meeting that is and is not
Call your local
regularly
Chamber of
scheduled?
Commerce or call me.
Okay, so I have to be on the phone with you every time, or are they going to make it public somehow?
Everybody else is, and again,
No. You can't have a million people calling you.
listen, I was just a little sarcastic, but What drives me crazy, and again, this is just my personal opinion, you know, there's information out there, there's programs. You should be able to pick up the phone and call your local legislator.
I should be able to
And
get
they
the
should
internet and
tell
be
you
able to find
exactly,
it.
which they should.
Well,
But
actually,
again,
I'm probably gonna regret the heck out of opening my mouth here. I already do. What is wrong with me? I don't even work for the county anymore. The legislative sessions are online. Everything is online.
They are
Nassau
online.
County, hold on.
Okay,
Hold on. Nassau County website is
Yes.
absolutely accessible and they're online. Whether or not you like what happens when you get to the meeting, a whole other story. But hold on, but they're there. They're absolutely there and they are they're very much publicized too. In fact, if you read Newsday, you know exactly what they're eating for breakfast today.
so when you're telling me that I have to spend, what is it, like?
Well, you just said you wanted to go
$30
online and find it out, so
Yeah.
you can find it out.
But here's the thing, I go online, I find it out, and it changes.
It doesn't always change, and that's a very rare instance when it
Usually
happens.
Doesn't sound
Mondays.
like it's that rare.
Well, then you spoke to the
Monday at
wrong
1
person, I
o'clock.
can tell you now,
As a
that's not
legislator,
a
you can
normal,
say, right?
When you go
that's not a normal occurrence. It's, hold on, it's not a normal occurrence, and then I'm also gonna
You
say,
have a
really
legislator in the
regret
room, why don't
this.
you let us say when the meeting's.
Oh, wait, here's a legislator right
Michael, let
here.
us say.
please, please.
Here's a legislator right here.
Okay, I actually saw you at the bus hearing yesterday, because I did go and I sat there and I listened. I grew
Thank
up
you.
in Long Beach and I was interested to hear what you had to say. I live in Great Neck, I represent the 10th district, there are 19 legislators, I just finished my first term. So I know there's a regular schedule of meetings for the year, and in December, the schedule will come out for all of 2016. The legislature usually meets twice a month, once committees, once full legislature, and they're on Mondays. They're always on Mondays,
Is
with
there one
rare
next Monday?
exception.
1
Is there a
o'clock.
special hearing?
Yeah, no, there's a meeting this coming Monday, yes, a full legislative meeting on Monday. So there is a definite
And
schedule,
by
it's
the way,
on the
they're
Nassau County
broadcast too.
website.
If you go to the
It's streamed,
website,
and you
it's
can go and
streamed
see
live.
past meetings as well.
Well, then I'll
And
do it.
again,
And
one second.
your legislator is Denise Ford.
I know.
So you can contact her at any time.
And one second, just to jump back on the economic development, because again, this is what happened. It's coming down to education of the general public. You know, let's go back towards economic development. You had a question?
Yeah, the statement, I own property in Florida, across New York. I know Village of Freeport, I get emails whenever there's meetings. You can go to Village of Freeport, sign up, give them your email address, they'll tell you when there's a meeting. I also own property in Freeport in Martin County. And whenever there's 4 or 5 economic development or local meetings, I'm on their website. They send me notices. My question to you, legislators, is why can't you introduce a website where people can sign up, give their email addresses, and then they automatically notify people.
Doesn't
that
Nassau
so-
Works do that? Tells
Well,
people?
but Nassau County, listen, that's what Nassau
Doesn't-
Works.
The app sign, the app that Nassau County has?
But Nassau County should have a site where we sign up, we give our email address, and they automatically email you on all the various meetings that they have, and you choose which ones you want to go to.
Well, that's a good idea, but
And
again,
it's not unique.
let's
Village
go
of
back,
Freeport
let's
does
go
it,
back,
and so
folks,
does
to the
Martin
economic
County.
development portion of it.
Yes.
Let's just steer right back. One second, Robert.
Yes.
You had said something before, Rebecca, that your organization liked the landscape in Nassau County. Can you delve into that a little bit more? Why?
Well, I think obviously it's populous, it's diverse,
Right.
and it has a desire, actually. We felt like after years of I don't know, quagmire, years of sort of delay and different attempts to try to get the hub developed, we felt that it was sort of palpable that people were ready to, you know, to accept the development there. And so that was sort of appealing. Obviously, as a market, it's a great market for entertainment. But we also, you know, I think in a lot of our planning, what we've tried to adhere to is the underlying, you know, zoning that the town and the county worked very hard to put in place. So there was a blueprint there for us to work on. We talk about our recent transfer. So Ronan and myself became, you know, we raised our kids in Brooklyn now. They're 8 and 4 and getting a little antsy in the apartment. So out we come. And actually, when we were looking for places to live, our walkability was the #1 thing. So the fact that we can walk from our house to downtown Huntington is absolutely, you know, the reason why we chose there. And I hear you on the bike paths and that sort of thing. So in the development of the site plan for the Coliseum, which now is, you know, a 77-acre parking lot, the town had laid out very specific requirements for roadways and pedestrian pathways. And we are incorporating that into our plans. So the bike path that goes along that Turnpike now now makes a right-hand turn and goes right up into our site. We have, you know, wide raised pedestrian medians so that people are not just sort of left amid a sea of parking. There actually is some sidewalk for them to get from their parking space to our space. And obviously we've been, you know, we've been engaged as much as we can be with the transit studies that have been going on, and we're sort of, you know, happy to park space on our site to accommodate future bus rapid transit if that comes to fruition, or those types of transit-oriented pieces, because we think it's important that people can take the train. We want folks to come from, you know, maybe Eastern Queens, you know, get on the train, get to the Mineola Transit Hub, and be able to take a reasonable bus trip down to our site.
Well, Lionel, I want to respond from our perspective. Welcome to Long Island. Long Island, we have a love affair with the car, especially with cheap gas. I'm nervous as all heck if we had bike lanes like in other parts of the country, because we've shown here that the people have no respect for school zones. They got outraged with, imagine this, they got a camera ticket when they're speeding in a school zone.
10 miles.
My daughter was struck by a car and in a coma for 10 days in Nassau County University Medical Center, crossing in a school zone when she was 12 years old. I lost my idea of talent, mind, and a scholarship, but she's a lawyer today, so she survived. We can't bike around here. We have to, when I was on, except they put bike lanes on the Montauk Parkway, and then we had to build a barrier there because people were getting struck. When I chaired for 16 years, Rockville Center Zoning Board, one of my most famous cases that I still cite today was Bally's Jackler Lane, a place where you go to exercise. The people only wanted to valet park. We gave them a public lot across the street. What's wrong with that picture? They didn't want to walk across the street. That's the, we have a fundamental problem on Long Island.
We do have a fundamental problem, and that goes to your education.
It goes to education.
But that's your responsibility as much as it's our responsibility as citizens. It's not just our responsibility to get educated, it's also our responsibility to be educated. I'm sorry, my best friend lives in Houston, Texas, which if there's any place on the planet that has a love affair with oil, it's going to be Houston, Texas.
Right.
They bike to work.
There's hope with my kids
Los
in the next
Angeles.
generation.
Yeah, but I am that generation, right?
Right.
I am here and I'm
Jessica,
saying,
you know what, here's the thing, you're coming here at Long Island at a pivotal time.
Very
Long
good.
Island was never supposed to be this way, okay? It wasn't supposed to be this way. The roads aren't wide enough for bike paths because when they built the roads, there was a third of the cars on it. I actually born the same year as you. Was it very different when I was a kid? Absolutely, absolutely. And then what the adults told me, it was very different from then. Our idea, and this was only in the 70s, we shot out east. That was like a big deal because there were farms. Now there's huge houses where there were farms, where there were peach farms. So I get your frustration because you're in that generation, but you have to understand that you're coming to Long Island at a point where we've actually reached that, here's another buzz term, critical mass, or tipping point, or whatever the heck we want to use. You're here now noticing that Long Island, you came to a Long Island that's too big for itself. It can't sustain, but now projects like this.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say.
Okay,
That's
right.
optimistic about.
Well, right, because what I'm saying is that pivotal point. All right, for projects, again, you weren't here 10 years ago when there was all-out bloodbaths because they wanted to develop the hub.
Right.
Right, and there was a massive project on board that would have transformed it, and it didn't go anywhere. Why? Politics. Also, to Jeff's point from the very beginning, everyone wants something, and then the minute that they announce they're gonna do it, there's a fight because they don't want it. We're gonna put bike lanes in, but we have to cut a tree down. End of the world. That's the way it goes.
So let me just jump back over. Mayor Kennedy,
Yes.
again, looking at Freeport,
Yes.
development, businesses, I don't know, but I know there are a lot of big industrial type businesses in your village. Are you doing anything to actively promote more, bring more in? Because a lot of it, and I ask that because, you know, I see what's going on in Hicksville through the IDA, and I just remember I used to work at WW Granger down in Freeport, and if you go back off the main road, it's like, oh my gosh, we got a lot of huge businesses back there.
There are quite a few businesses down there. We've been doing a lot of advertising. And in fact, we just sent a mailer out to all of Queens and Brooklyn showing them our electric rates and water rates comparatively what they would spend there compared to us. Our electric rates are 40% less than anybody in Queens. Our water is 30% less than anybody in Queens and Brooklyn. You know, what I've said before is we're developing, we have probably over $100 million right now on Sunrise Highway going. You have Maserati and Porsche being redone, knocked down. You have Land Rover and Jaguar being done. You have a project, the bank's been in litigation for 14 years. I came into office about a year and a half ago. Within 1 year, I had a litigation, stipulation of settlement that's been on the market, which we have a couple of offers on the table right now for a development, probably $70 to $100 million. So there are some offers there. We're really developing. We're trying to bring people in. You know, I go back to the same thing. You give them good services. You provide security. You keep your tax. We haven't had a tax increase now going on 3 years. So we're providing better services. We're keeping taxes down. We're becoming more efficient. We have more additional revenues and less expenses, and everybody seems to be happy. We're really increasing our industrial and economic development tremendously just in the past 2 years. I can see people saying, I want to buy that building because I see them doing this. I would like to invest in that building because I see them developing over there. So I'm very happy the way it's moving, and we're going to continue doing it, and we need to continue having our buildings department, ZBA, and planning board work with the developers, not against them. They need to be friendly. They need to bring people in. They need to help them.
Thank you. There's been a lot of conversation today about keeping the youth here and will not, speaking maybe more so for Nassau County, but nonetheless, where it's beginning the taxes and the cost of utilities and the transit expenses and so forth. And we're hearing a lot that the youth get their education here and then they move elsewhere where it is more affordable. So the question on the economic side, economic development side, is what is coming down the pike, if anything, that's on a large scale that, I know it's not to McDonald's and Burger King, but you can't own a $500,000 house on $8, $9 an hour. So what is coming down the pike, if anything, that is on a large scale of tech, of bio, of defense, space, that is going to earn the 6-digit salaries that are going to keep the youth here in Long Island?
Are you Norman now or Nick?
I'm Nick, especially after the last conversation. I'm really Nick. So let's take a stab at your question. So there's a question in economic development, what comes first, the job or the housing opportunity, right? And so it's a struggle, right? Because employers want to bring their companies to places where their employees can live. And people are always looking for younger, smarter workers, next generation workers, et cetera. In Nassau County, we're ending at 12:45, everybody. In Nassau County, I'm proud to say we're working on both tracks on a parallel basis, right? So we're working to create transit-oriented development housing opportunities for young professionals. And at the same time, we're working very hard to attract and retain our companies. I'll give you an example for each. So probably the most important technology company that nobody's heard of in Nassau County is a company called Dealer Track Technologies. They're in late success. They were publicly traded on the NASDAQ, and they were recently acquired by Cox Automotive, a multinational company based in Atlanta. They are in 25 different states and I think 5 or 6 different countries. They have in Nassau County 350 full-time employees. Average salary is $100,000. They've created a proprietary software that almost every car dealership in the country uses to manage parts, inventory, service, etc. They literally could have gone anywhere. And they hired a site selector, which is essentially a commercial real estate agent that negotiates incentive packages from different municipalities. And they came to us, and we worked with them for about 3 years to finalize a deal. Anyway, they could have gone anywhere. We convinced them to stay in Nassau County. They're going to keep the 350 jobs they currently have, and they're going to add another 350, all at that same salary level of around 6 figures. They're investing $150 million to build their world headquarters between the northern state and the LIE in the North Hills. It's going to be their trophy building a world global headquarters. Those are the types of jobs that everybody wants, and they're being created right here in Nassau County. It's not a fallacy. It's not something that we're thinking about doing one day in the future. It's happening right now. It's happening right now. In addition, we struck a deal with the NYIT, the school NYIT, and we're building a cybersecurity incubator for them in Bethpage. That's going to attract world-class defense and cybersecurity companies that want to work alongside New York State in the Startup New York program. Again, we expect this to attract a lot of companies and a lot of new employees. On the transit-oriented development, and I'm sure a lot of the sessions today touched on this, but if you look at Mineola, Farmingdale, Greatneck, a lot of municipalities throughout the county, now for the first time, they've wrapped their head around, in Rockville Center, the idea of creating denser transit-oriented development housing by train stations. So we're providing both housing and job opportunities for young professionals. And I'm a member of my colleague's generation there, the Hofstra professor. I'm also 33, and I think it's an exciting time for people our age. And we're very happy to be doing this type of work.
So just a part B to that. So we do see a marriage happening with the youth of, again, Nassau County specifically, graduating from Hofstra, from Nassau County colleges, universities, with the future opportunity to earn these high salary jobs so they can remain in Long Island?
That's the goal.
We don't have anywhere else to go. It's come down to that. Yes.
I want to follow up on what Mayor Kennedy said on a real life opportunity that Long Island took advantage of. In Rockville Center, we had a long-time manufacturing business that outgrew their facility. Mayor Murray and myself encouraged them to go to Freeport because they're spoiled on inexpensive electric like Rockville Center. And to sustain their business, that's where they should go. And then their Rockville Center site, they turned into the Hampton Inn of Rockville Center. And now they're building an addition there. So we work together, tell them it's another incorporated village. You'll get good services from the incorporated village of Freeport, and that's Robson House.
No, Hampton Inn is now moving out, come here too.
No. You're not that big, we just gave you Robson House, and they like being in business in Freeport. They're hiring local. I wear another hat. I'm a board member at Malloy College. As I remind the sisters, I'm a minority board member there. And some of our students have obtained jobs locally with them and other businesses, and we've done a lot of good outreach into the community for the benefit of the students of Malloy.
Beautiful. You have a question?
Well, actually, I have a statement that was going to follow Mayor Kennedy's in hers. Just to let you know that Freeport is a very bikeable town.
Yeah, but you can't get there.
Well,
I can't get there without driving.
You're going to be hearing a lot from her.
I can't get there without driving.
Freeport is affordable, cheap electric, cheap water, and you can bike around.
You gotta move to Freeport, that's what I'm
That's
hearing.
it.
And then I'm stuck in Freeport because I can't bike anywhere else.
I'll come back here. I'm just going to throw Dylan on the spot a little bit. Dylan's a student at Nassau Community College. He was nice to reach out to his professor, who reached out to him, and he's going to be interning with me on my numerous different projects. Dylan, you've been listening, this is your second session today. What is economic development, those jobs for the future? By the way, he's also looking, so if anybody's interested. Tell me in your own words, what does it mean to you?
I think it just means growing more jobs for the youth, for the people that are upcoming, such as myself. I mean, I'm a 20-year-old kid who's having a very hard time finding part-time work, especially in a field that I want to go into, which is more sales marketing. And thanks to internship from this Chitty here, maybe that'll help. But I'm starting to see a lot of people not getting into this economic growth that you guys are all speaking of. I see you guys saying like, oh, we're doing this, we're doing that, things are going to start going. We have, as you were just saying there, not to call anyone out, but as you were saying there, that there's a lot of opportunities to have a high salary. But honestly, I don't see that. And I see people, maybe 5, 6 years older, I don't see them doing anything. I don't know if it's just my town or the people around me, not that I associate with bad people, I associate very sus people in ways too, but I'm having a hard time believing what everyone is saying through this with the economic growth because of the lack of opportunity that at least I'm seeing personally as well as other people around me.
And I wanted to add that, listen, I volunteer a lot of my hours and people go, why? Well, I'm in sales, I have my own company, independent sales for different companies. And I tell them, listen, I'd rather get involved with these organizations who try to do a good thing, other than having to go knock on doors because I'm going to do that to work for my minister. But what I see is, there's always a lot of talk about doing stuff. We talk, we meet, we talk. Let's meet, talk, and do. Let's meet, talk, and do. I keep hearing the same things over and over again. I want to know, what do you guys think? You had said you wanted to jump in or something?
Yeah, I just want to say I'm 72 years old, and I have a grandson that's your age, and my children are about the age of everybody in this room. But it's very encouraging to hear that we're at this this point in time where things are changing. I've been involved in government planning and economic development since 1973, 74. And I'll never forget, one time we brought a presentation up to the members of the legislature of the town, and someone said, well, but it was for an apartment house. And someone said, yeah, but where are they gonna barbecue? You know, and that was the philosophy way back when. You know, if you don't have a backyard, you don't have a barbecue, you know, that's not what we're looking for in this area. And it's changed dramatically, and it's very encouraging as a grandfather and as a retiree, as a parent of children, to hear this, that the change that we're making, that we're looking different. But thank you.
Like I said, I recently moved up to Nassau, and new school district, and I go to a school district. And I'm watching this open house presentation stuff going on. The principal said, we're training your kids for jobs that don't exist. My son's 12 years old, and they're training him for a job that doesn't exist. I was like, okay, how does that translate? Well, instead of him writing his research papers, I was going to be typing them in Google Docs. I'm like, what about the writing? I needed to remind myself, this isn't for me. This is for my kids that are coming through. When it comes to economic development, it's the education. It's what we want, but it's going to be what the younger generation is going to need to be able to survive. We came up, like somebody else said, go to school, get a job, stay there for the rest of your life, get a pension, and you're done. When I was coming up, I think the number was we changed careers 6 or 7 times. Those days are over. There's been a dramatic shift. Long Island was built with Drummond, large organizations that came in and hired everybody, put everybody to work. The roads were built around their specific needs. What's going to be the next generation? And what's going to be that type of planning? Does anybody else want to chime in on that?
I work with Sperry, so I know exactly what you're saying. Now it's an industrial office complex.
Yeah, things are slowly
And
changing.
that's how it changes.
I think we absolutely have to be thinking about the pipeline, and because there's a gap between the 20s and the 33s. I think we absolutely have to be thinking about resiliency, because when you have gaps in employment, you don't have stability for home ownership. And that's great for economic development if you like people that move and put things in storage and have 20,000 storage units popping up in your neighborhood. But it's not good for a sense of community and the development of local talent and the retention of good employees.
So there's a national trend that is affecting every jurisdiction in the country, and that's people are getting married later in life, having families later in life, and buying that single family home later in life. And so I think the challenge for us and the opportunity for us is what do you do during that gap period from, let's say, 22 or 23 when you graduate college till when you're in your 30s and you get married, buy a house, and have children. And that's where the transit-oriented development, I think, is really critical. It's that demographic group as well as the baby boomers who are retiring and looking for single-family, getting out of their single-family houses. That's the opportunity for them. That's the housing opportunity for them.
Part of what you are missing in the picture that I've heard spoken to is the health demographic that changes with that. And so you have to keep your young people healthier if they're going to go into childbearing later.
And
There's
also
a 1 in 68 autism rate. There's, you're having all these risks that increase, and then you have an aging population, and the people who would normally be caregiving that are now still tied up with raising their families. So there's a cost, and we really have to look in a more complete and integrated way at what certain trade-offs are in accepting a certain, decision that this type of development is good.
Legislature?
I was going to say that in the hub area, Sloan Kettering
Yes.
has purchased land. They're going to have a treatment and cancer research center. So there's hopes that more tech companies and science research firms will be attracted to the island as well.
Absolutely. So just to talk about New York State just for 1 second. So New York State, the governor has carved up the state into 10 economic development regions. Long Island is one region. And each region there's a regional council. Ours is co-chaired by Kevin Law, president of the LA, and Stuart Biddle, the president of Hofstra. And there's a regional council made up of industry, university, and different sector leaders. Anyway, each region had to come up with the target industry that collectively the region would work on to attract companies. And our industry is biotech. That's going to be our focus in economic development from a state perspective for a long time. And why is that? Healthcare is the largest employer in Nassau County, and because of that aging population. So people do realize that. It's just how it all comes together is we'll all have to work together to see what happens.
Yeah, actually, in regards to, let's say, our generation and getting around and the TOD and the development projects, this is all, fine and dandy, but the reasons why we initially moved out of Long Island in the first place is because there's no TOD. There's no interconnectivity where there's bikeable paths. There's no consistency with, let's say, public transportation, maybe bus routes if you're not located in a TOD area like Rockville Center, Freeport, that sort of thing. So I think that work needs to be done, in a circle as well as the north, south, east and west, so that there is connectivity, so that we can get to our jobs that are at Hofstra, so that we can get to our jobs that are at Sloan Kettering or at the new Coliseum. Because if we can't get to them, and we're no longer a community, a population that wants the white picket fence. We don't want the big houses. We do want to live, let's say, in more of a community development kind of setup where there's all the facilities are there for you. It's walkable, it's bikeable, and there's public transportation.
I was just going to ask you to jump in on that.
We spent years at the Nassau County Planning Commission in preparation for the hub development and to have it a sustainable development. One of the things that's lacking on Long Island is north-south Long Island Railroad transportation. Robin Moses left us in a lurch with that. And one of the things we talked about is from Freeport to have up the middle of the Meadowbrook Parkway to Hofstra, to the hub, to the Hempstead Railroad Station, and AirTran type transportation. There's just a few $1 billion standing in the way of that. We have the right of way. We have the right of way there. And it would be great, and that would help, it would help Freeport, it would help Hempstead, and in between you'd have stops at Hofstra, Nassau Community College. We would have it at the new Coliseum and at the office building there. That would be great. But on a realistic, we have to work in different directions to get it done. The Sloan Kettering development, even if it was coming out of my village of Rockville Center, Mercy Hospital, we fast-tracked that to go to the Coliseum site, because quite frankly, with the existing road network we had, that was the right project for the right site, and accessible, easier for people for Suffolk County, people needing health care from Sloan, the world leader in cancer care, and people that can't get to New York City or don't want to go to New York City. That was a great project that Nassau County came up with. We embraced it, and we got the job done, and it is a positive thing for that site. Instead of early on, we looked at that Coliseum parking lot, and we have all that wasted frontage on Hempstead Turnpike, and a few days a year, they fill the lot and go all the way that way. Everyone recognized that. The county put in for grants to build parking structures there to sustain whatever future development and maximize the use of the project. The youthful life, whether it be the Coliseum or Sloan Kettering or the biotech, which we're all working on. There's a lot of incubator companies looking to come to Nassau County, a lot of high tech. That'll give our young people jobs. That is the next Grumman, the next Sperry, the next wave to come here. Our kids are highly skilled and highly trained at Nassau, at Hofstra, at Malloy, at Delphi, CW Post, NYIT, Old Westbury. We got it all there, and we just got to get them to stay here, and that's the way we're going to grow Long Island.
Mr. President, Alumni Association, Sylvan Westbury, thank you for the talk. Any other comments before we start closing arguments? Yes.
One challenge.
All right. Closing comments.
We had the arguments early on.
One challenge I didn't really hear brought up today, which everyone who lives on Long Island knows, is taxes and the amount of taxing jurisdiction. I'm just wondering, everything that you guys described is all great and fun, I think will be beneficial. Is there a future to all what you're discussing without there being some sort of change in taxes and taxing jurisdictions on all of Long Island, not just Nassau
You
County?
see how this all just keeps coming together?
As I said before, in the Village of Freeport, you have to address your expenses and your revenues. The fact of the matter is, for 3 years now, we haven't increased taxes, but we've increased services by probably 20%. I mean, this is what's going to bring in development. This is what's going to bring in confidence with the people. When people see that tax bills haven't gone up for years, but yet their services are increased, this is why people are staying. This is what's going to bring people back into the neighborhood. This is what's going to bring children back into the neighborhood. They can afford to buy a house without anticipating a 5 or a 7 or a 9% tax increase every year.
You need to realize, listen, it's not just a local, county, region, national economy. We're in a global economy. Everything globally is going up tremendously. I just saw something that the number of international students studying here in this country has quadrupled. But we need to be able to realize that. So we're just going to start, Rebecca. What would be your closing statements as far as economic development? Take your time. Go ahead.
I don't want to repeat anything I said before, but obviously, we're very excited to be here. We're happy. As far as economic development, one thing I wanted to mention earlier was that by our taking over the Coliseum, we actually have also assumed all of the operating costs of the building too, of the county. So just when you asked before, what do we see about Nassau and that market, I think it's important to realize that we saw enough in it to realize that it's worth taking that huge responsibility, that building, relieving the taxpayers of it, and doing, investing $260 million in private development, private development dollars into the site. And we're here for a long time, and I think it's really important. It is an important time for us to be developing here because we bring a lot of our, the sensibility and the beliefs about what makes successful development from the city here in Nassau, and Nassau City's ready.
Everybody make sure we support them because hopefully they'll be able to do more in that part. Thank you. Susan?
We're happy to be here. Continue providing critical service. We're going to continue making a positive impact on the environment. No matter what we build, we still need to have clean water in the bays and clean oceans, and make sure that no matter what you build, whether there's high density or just another home, the infrastructure that we maintain is always going to be there. So just keep a mind on the unseen.
You folks are here because you care about economic development in Nassau County, and whether we're appointed or elected, we're new government, a lot of government partners I see in the room. We all need to work together and don't be shy in expressing your opinions like you have here today. Our agency, and the chairman of our board, Tim, is here. Our job is to really be an ally to the business community in Nassau County, and that's every business. We want to be involved in every transaction, from a strip mall going up to the redevelopment of the Coliseum and everything in between. We have the ability to provide tax incentives, and like my colleague Mr. Chafee mentioned, taxes are a major issue. We're able to incentivize businesses to come to Nassau without cutting their taxes. We're very proud of that. Nassau County cannot afford to cut taxes, but we're able to be very aggressive within our confines, which we self-impose on ourselves. So if you're working with any business, anything going on at all, I'll leave my cards up here. Please call us. We want to be helpful. Thank you.
Yep.
At the Nassau County Planning Commission, we understand it's a balance. We try to strike that balance between granting the developers the right to develop the property, but we preach to them that you have to have respect for your neighbors. We understand sustainability. I have Neil Lewis, who runs the Sustainability Institute at Malloy, who sits as a commissioner, and he's well schooled me over the years. As chairman, I give out trees freely because I want whatever's developed, whether it be a small parcel or large, to be good neighbors. We make sure they do plantings and buffers, and that they support and sustain this with irrigation, and make sure that they live what should be in peace and harmony with the neighborhoods that they move into. So we're moving the ball forward, but respecting the suburban way of life of Nassau County.
Mayor?
First, I'd like to thank Vision Long Island for having the 14th Smart Growth Summit, and also thank all of our speakers that took off today here to be with us. I just want to say thank you. But in final closing, I'd like to say, please come enjoy Freeport one day. We're going to have a festival next June, the first weekend in June. Come out and see what a beautiful place it is. You know, we have some bragging rights. You know, we've brought our reserves from 2.5 to 9.5 million in 2 years. Our police department is well ahead of the curve. It's a great little town. The nautical mile is back and thriving. So I invite you all to come out and please refer some business to come out and see the town that has the best of electric rates and water rates around. This is the best place I could be to advertise Freeport.
When you go with that, come over next time. But again, these are my last statements, so we'll go out before they come back and tell us another 10 minutes. Listen, have the conversation. When you have the NIMBYs, tell them to have the conversation with them. Let's talk about it, come to a decision and get things done. We've been talking too doggone long. Our young people deserve better. We want to be able to keep hear and want to hear what they have to say. Thank you again so much, everybody. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.